Hey guys, tonight we wake up somewhere cold, damp, and strangely enough, still alive. There's straw poking into your back, something scratching behind the wall, and a very specific smell in the air, possibly goat. You try to sit up, but your neck isn't cooperating. Your pillow is a sack of barley. Welcome to medieval life, where comfort is a myth and hot water is basically sorcery. Your clothes itch, your knees crack, and you haven't even left the bed yet, but somehow you're already exhausted. Fair warning, you're not going to make it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And by the way, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I always love seeing who's traveling through time zones with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crawl out of the straw heap, or more accurately, you attempt to. Every movement feels like a fragile negotiation between joints that have aged decades too soon. Because here, being 22 means you've basically hit retirement. Your heel touches the cold, unforgiving ground. Something soft and slimy squishes beneath your foot. You silently hope it's just wet grass. But deep down, you know it's not. You sit up, bonk. Your head hits a wooden beam because your home is roughly the height of a mule's shoulder. No windows, no private rooms. Just you, your parents, 3 siblings, and 1 goat, all sharing what architects today would call an open concept layout. And no, privacy doesn't exist. The closest thing to alone time is pretending to be asleep. You peel off the heavy wool blanket draped over you. It hasn't been washed since last winter, and this winter is already knocking. It has a smell, hard to define. Somewhere between old gym socks and a wet dog trapped in a car trunk for a week. Maybe that's what woke you up. The church bell rings in the distance, not to invite you to prayer, but to remind you another day has begun, and you owe it to God, your landlord, and the cruel joke that is life itself, to work it without complaint. You shuffle outside, no slippers, no shoes. Most peasants like you walk barefoot all year. You do have shoes, if you count a pair of soggy, cracked leather blobs that have looked dead since last week. You step onto the cold ground and walk straight into the medieval morning. You're standing in the middle of the village square trying to guess what the weather is planning to do to you today. It's not raining, but it's not sunny either. Not freezing, but the breeze is sharp enough to make you question your life choices, especially the one where you left your wool cloak at home. The same one your neighbor's cow recently chewed a hole through. You glance around. No clock, no weather app, just a second rooster crow and a shrinking shadow at your feet. You're late. Again. And someone's definitely about to yell at you. The love of a knight. When you wear 30 kilograms of armor, but your heart is still as soft as Normandy butter left out in the sun. You're lying in bed, moonlight slipping through the small window, casting its glow across the gray stone wall. As gray as your love life has been since last month when Elise, the only one bold enough to gift you a handkerchief embroidered with a pink pig, suddenly left for the convent, saying it was to find God. Though, you know. It was probably also because you once recited her a love poem that rhymed, plate, fate, deflate. You sigh. Because in this age, love is no simple thing. You can't send messages, you can't heart her story, and coffee tonight is definitely not a thing. If you want to pursue someone, you have to write a letter. Then ask a page boy to ride a donkey through forests, dodge dogs, avoid rain, and absolutely not let the letter soak up grease from lunch. You have to fight. Not rivals in love, but social customs, etiquette, honor, faith, and occasionally her uncle, who wears a cross the size of a battle shield. Historians still debate, was love in the Middle Ages truly romantic or just a legend embroidered to sell poetry and tapestries? Some records speak of knights pledging loyalty to a noble lady, not to marry her, not to touch her hand, but simply to stand from afar and gaze through her window like a scholarly owl. You've done the same. Stood in the rain, soaked to the bone, just to catch a glimpse of her passing the window, holding a bowl of soup. You know she loves olive green, hates offbeat lute playing, and once secretly gave you extra cheese at last year's harvest feast. Your love has no movie nights, no weekend picnics, just long horseback rides across open fields, coincidentally passing by her garden. Though your horse knew perfectly well you had no real reason to head that way, other than longing and flustered instinct. And there's something strange. The more unreachable she became, the more deeply you felt for her. Not because she was hard to get, but because you knew. Standing before the one you love, all your strength disappears, leaving only an awkward man fumbling to lift his helmet for air, trying to say, "I miss you," but sounding more like, "I swallowed a goose feather." You still remember the scent of her hair, lavender mixed with wood smoke and warm pastry. You once said, "That scent, it's like heaven, sweet and oddly hunger-inducing." She laughed. You thought, perhaps even if I'd won 1,000 battles, none would match that one smile. You know, a knight doesn't always triumph, doesn't always stand beneath a banner. Some nights, like tonight, there is only a hard bed, cold wind, and a heart knocking gently on memory's door. And if you're still awake, just think of her, that girl, not as a distant dream, but as a small part of your warrior's life, a part that helps you endure armor, thin soup, and the awful poetry of the nameless bard in the back courtyard, a part that keeps you steady in the saddle, even if your heart sometimes falls. Noon, when justice rides a horse and eats hard cheese. You've just finished breakfast, stomach full, spirit steady. You even scored a glorious victory against a training dummy in a short but emotionally satisfying sword practice session. You always win against straw. So you plan to rest, lie under a tree, listen to birdsong, daydream a little about the time before armor became your everyday work uniform. But a knight's life is never that simple. A young boy from the stables comes running, breathless. His shirt is covered in hay, eyes wide like he's seen a ghost, breathing like someone who's just been chased by an old lady wielding a wooden spoon. "Sir, there's a quarrel in Wickerbridge. Someone says another person's pig destroyed their garden, and someone got hit with a stale loaf of bread." You rise, not angry, not surprised, just sighing deeply, because deep down, you already knew this would be another day without dragons, just diplomacy. You mount your horse, large, loyal, slightly dim, but endearing. The villagers call him Thunderhoof. You usually call him Stop Chewing My Cloak. You ride out through the castle gates, cloak billowing in the wind. From afar, you might look like a hero or like a majestic curtain come to life, depending on the angle. On the way, you pass a monk picking rosemary and sage in his garden. He waves kindly. You wave back. Both of you know you're off to save the world, one vegetable patch at a time. You arrive to find the perfect medieval minor catastrophe. An elderly woman with silver hair and a flushed face, brandishing a wooden spoon like the supreme weapon of the era. A farmer clutching a plump pig, his face shaped into a desperate denial of all responsibility since childhood. She yells, "It ruined my parsley garden. 3rd time this month." And that's Maud, the pig I used to sing lullabies to when she was a baby. You look at the pig looks at you. Its expression is blank. It's chewing a sprig of greens, entirely unbothered. You inhale deeply. You were trained to ride horses, hold lances, fight barbarians. No one trained you to mediate pig-related herbal disputes, but you are a knight, which means people trust you for justice, even when justice smells faintly of manure. You declare, "The farmer must fix the fence. The old lady should stop singing lullabies to livestock, lest more animals start thinking they're people." Both nod, not thrilled, but agreeable. And you know, sometimes peace doesn't need applause, just silence. You mount your horse and ride back to the castle. On the way, the monk hands you a block of cheese, as hard as granite. You smile and accept it, knowing full well it could be used to cause moral injury if thrown at someone's head. You didn't slay a beast. You didn't rescue a princess. No songs will be sung about you today. But you did the right thing. You kept the peace. And for a true knight, sometimes calming one angry villager is harder than breaking a spear. And if you're still awake now, imagine yourself riding home, wind brushing your cheeks, cloak fluttering behind, a block of cheese in the saddlebag, heavy and solid like responsibility, and your heart light. Light. You are a knight. And the only thing left to do today is rest. And if you still can't fall asleep, gently close your eyes, relax your shoulders, and let all the burdens of today slip from your mind, like a heavy shield set down on a stone floor after a long battle. Now just imagine, you're living in an ancient world where there are no phones, no emails, and definitely no deadlines. Because you're not an office worker. You are a medieval knight. Of course, brave knight. Now you lie there, legs still aching, arms sore as if you've just carried a full-grown pig around the castle 3 times, and you wonder, why does my body feel like it was trampled by a herd of elephants? The answer is simple. Because you are a knight. And before you ever wore armor, swung a sword, or were called sir, you had to endure a training program so brutal that, had you known in advance, you might have chosen to be a baker instead. The grueling training of a knight, when you learn to fight, fall, fast, and say, yes, sir, all at once. As a child, you didn't play games. You played javelin throwing with sticks and got into biting matches with roosters. At age 7, you were sent to a lord's household to begin your foundational education. You were called a page, the official title for a person who does everything except make decisions about their own life. Your duties included polishing a knight's boots, even if those boots were iron-plated, cleaning armor with old rags, cold water, and faint dreams of promotion, and memorizing 132 rules of etiquette, including highlights like do not burp next to someone of higher status unless you're choking on salted meat. You weren't taught math. You were taught how to fall correctly. Each morning, your instructor would yell, fall. You'd fall. Get up. You'd rise, fall again, and you'd wonder, is this martial arts or some bizarre form of 13th century entertainment? Historians still debate whether knightly training was truly as comprehensive as legend suggests, or simply a loose series of physical activities soaked in sweat and confusion. Some records mention pages being trained to ride horses through flaming hoops, while others mostly shoveled manure and yelled Godspeed whenever a knight fell off his steed. You learned to wield a sword. It was heavy. Your hands hurt. Your shoulders trembled like branches beneath a squirrel's dance. You learned to ride. The first time, you almost fell. The second time, you did. The third time, the horse looked at you as if it was thinking, we both know who the smarter creature is in this relationship. You also had to learn proper manners, which included bowing at the correct angle, holding your wine without spilling, speaking to noble women without stuttering through a mouthful of cheese. At night, you lay in a cold room under a straw blanket, moonlight spilling across your bed, your hands blistered, your back sore, and in your head echoed the question, why didn't I become a poet? Or a cabbage farmer, perhaps. But then morning came, and you rose again, put the armor on again, lifted the sword again, fell again, and heard the legendary words of your instructor. Hurt, if you're still alive, you haven't hurt enough. Now you lie here, your body weary, but in your heart there is one thing you know for sure. You've survived brutal days of training, and that means you're either strong enough to do something great or stubborn enough to never quit. You have been forged. Like steel through fire, like bread through a scorching oven, and like your heart through 1,000 falls and 100 armor cleanings with filthy rags. A knight's salary in the Middle Ages, also known as fighting for glory and a bag of dried beans. You're a knight. You have armor, a horse, a sword, sometimes even style. You ride into battle, rescue princesses, slay dragons, or convince villagers it was just a very large black cow. But what people rarely talk about is, how much do you actually get paid? The short answer? Not enough to afford a tutor to help you calculate taxes. The long answer? You're paid with a curious mix of a small pouch of gold, not always guaranteed, a plot of land somewhere near the Viking border, the right to ride into town without paying the gate fee, and eternal glory, which unfortunately does not help when you're hungry. In truth, a knight's pay depends entirely on the mood of whoever's paying, your lord or your king. If he's in a good mood, you might get a fur-lined cloak. If he just lost a bet, you'll get a pat on the back and a promise of, next time, remind me. Historians still argue about the actual income of knights. Some claim they were generously paid, silver per day. Others point out, sure, silver, but they had to buy their own armor, feed their own horse, and pay for trouser repairs after falling from the saddle because their weapon was too heavy. Conclusion. The salary might have been fine if you didn't spend anything for 5 years. But you, the knight, never complain publicly. You simply draw your sword to fight a monster, then draw your coin pouch to buy a new belt, then quietly slip out of the tavern because you can't afford to tip. And here's another truth. Not only is your pay low, you must obey your superiors with enthusiastic submission. Because if not, you're no longer a knight. You're the man in metal standing outside the gates, waiting to be let back in. Obedience to command is an art form. When your lord says, "Ride to the northern fortress, clear out the bandits, and bring me the head of their leader," you must bow, place your hand on your chest, and respond with unwavering loyalty, "Yes, my lord." And, "May I bring a packed lunch?" Or when the king declares, "Tomorrow we march on the Hungarians with an elite force," you nod, trying not to ask. Elite meaning who exactly? Because yesterday Sir Hector swung at a tree and then apologized to it. You learn to show just enough obedience to stay out of the dungeon, but just enough aloofness not to be sent to raid the enemy camp during a hailstorm. You develop a special skill called hearing orders as if listening to a band you don't like, but don't dare skip. In summary, you're paid in a way that lets you survive if you eat little. You obey commands in a way that says, "Yes, sir," while hoping he gets distracted by a rooster. And still, you live, fight, love, and eat cheese as hard as cobblestone because in your heart is honor, and in your pocket, absolutely nothing. At this hour, you're already lying still in bed. The armor has been removed. A smudge of evening cheese still lingers on your mustache. Your body whispers, "We survived another day." And your mind begins to drift, not into dreams, but into the weather. Because in the Middle Ages, weather wasn't just small talk at parties. It was the main event, the deity of your mood, the rude roommate who never asked if you wanted the window open. Outside, the night is pitch black. Not the gentle glow of amber street lamps you're used to, but the kind of dark where if you step out after 9 p.m. without a candle, you might walk face first into a cow and think it's a person. The wind blows like it just got a raise, slipping through stone cracks, crawling up your trousers, whistling across your neck, and whispering into your ear, "Hello, I'm the east wind, and I have a particular interest in your left kidney." You pull the blanket up, not a down comforter, of course, but a thick woolen sheet made from 3 sheep and 1 unfinished dream. It itches, it's heavy, and it smells faintly of "I used to cover a carriage in the rainy season," but you're still grateful because at least it's not snow. You think back on the day. Today's weather was rather pleasant by medieval standards, meaning the sun rose, no one got struck by lightning, and the fields didn't wash away. A fantastic day. 5-star weather. Would experience again. You remember a not-so-pleasant day last winter. The wind was so strong that a goat was blown onto the roof. A cloak vanished and returned a week later, soaked and bearing signs of pigeon visitation. And you, a seasoned knight, had to hide in the hayloft, pretending to inventory farming tools for 3 straight hours. Historians still debate, was the medieval climate truly harsher, or did people just complain more because they didn't have Netflix? Some say the Little Ice Age made winters longer, snow deeper, and soup consumption higher than any other era in human history. Others argue it wasn't the weather, it was the wooden beds, and if you wanted to be warm, you had to hug a cat, a living one. In your time, the age of armor, beeswax candles, and bread like cobblestones, weather dictated moods, schedules, and sometimes survival. Rain? Cancel the fair. Postpone the wedding. Patch the muddy road with old straw. Sun? Lovely. But also meant wearing armor was like stepping into a 200-degree oven. Fog? Romantic, until you rode your horse into a pigpen and got your hem gently nibbled. You once heard the village seer say, "If the clouds drift eastward, the harvest will be good." You looked up. The clouds just circled like children playing tag, and you nodded silently, because you didn't have the energy to argue with someone waving a porcupine quill and calling it a spiritual compass. Nature in the Middle Ages was like that. Not friendly, not neutral. Like a weather-obsessed roommate with mood swings and no warning. A clear day could end in a thunderstorm. A gloomy one could bring a double rainbow and someone shouting, "Do you see it? It's a sign from Friar." You didn't dare mention it was just moisture, light, 8th grade physics. But despite the chaos, nature always reminded you. Every time the wind brushes your face, you're truly alive. Every time it rains, the fields smile, and you mutter curses because your tunic's still damp. And every time the moon rises, you remember, the world is bigger than this castle, this glory, this slightly musty bed of yours. And now, as you lie still, the wind still blows, the night remains dark, and the distant call of an owl echoes like it's rehearsing for some brooding opera. You don't need to fight anymore. You don't need to settle land disputes. You don't have to pretend to understand ancient poetry. Just close your eyes, let the wind sing you to sleep, like an invisible grandmother turning down your blanket and whispering, "Sleep, child. Tomorrow it will drizzle gently, and the cheese will be less hard." Afternoon, when you're not at war but still sweating under a 4-kilogram steel helmet. Returning from Wickerbridge after a morning spent resolving disputes over pigs and parsley, you think, maybe I should rest a bit, maybe I should bathe, maybe I should write a few lines of poetry for the red-haired lady in the next village. But then, the brass horn echoes from the inner courtyard. Not a festival, not an alarm, just the afternoon training call. Because you're a knight, and knights train more than they actually fight. Historians still debate whether they really trained that much, or just used it as an excuse to parade around the castle in fancy gear. You change into your training armor, still heavy, but less so than the official set designed for wrestling in mud and shining in poetry. You put on your steel helmet, heavy like an overripe melon, though far less fragrant. You step onto the training grounds. Before you stands a scarecrow in armor, affectionately known as Sir Practice Dummy, a row of long wooden lances upright in formation, and a wide open space, always hotter than you remember, especially when encased in metal from head to toe. You begin with a few sword swings, 1, 2, 3, like a slow dance with the air. Each slash sings through the wind with a whoosh. You feel pretty cool. Until your sword catches on your cloak strap and nearly chokes you with your own enthusiasm. You stop to catch your breath, sweating, thinking to yourself, maybe I should shed a layer of cloth or a layer of pride. Next comes horseback lance training. You mount Thunderhoof, your loyal steed, still chewing grass and deeply uninterested in the affairs of men. You raise your lance and charge down the wooden targets. Each hit earns you a silent reward in your mind. 1 point for honor, 1 point for technique, and 1 point for not falling off. But on the third run, you get too eager. The lance snaps, the horse stumbles. You nearly go flying forward, but manage to hug Thunderhoof's neck like a lamppost in a blizzard. Thunderhoof turns his head, looking at you as if to say, "Calm down, my guy. This isn't Medieval Avengers, Glitch Edition." As you wipe off sweat, you hear the sound of a lute. A wandering bard plays in the courtyard, singing. Some soldiers gather around. No one tells you to join. But you, a knight with a romantic soul, walk over, arms crossed, and listen. The song is about a knight who fell into a ditch while staring at his muse. The whole yard erupts in laughter. You chuckle too, though deep down you wonder, is this a subtle jab at what happened to you last week? The afternoon stretches on. Sunlight spills long across the grass. Birds glide gently in the sky like commas at the end of the day. You sit on the stone steps, remove your helmet, hair flattened and tinged with the scent of time. You take a sip of cool water, gaze at the setting sun, and quietly reflect, no battles, no glory, but today I stood steadier, moved quicker, and fell less than yesterday. Maybe that's enough. Breakfast. Fueling your mission to defend Fen justice, or at least to fend off hunger. You step into the castle kitchen, where the scent of aged cheese mingles with the heat of burning firewood and the rhythmic thuds of a servant pounding dough like he's exacting revenge on life. This morning's menu isn't luxurious. No croissants, no soft-boiled eggs sprinkled with Himalayan pink salt. Instead, there's a loaf of dark bread, brick-sized and so dense that if you threw it at someone, it might spark a minor feudal war. You dip it into a bowl of honey, thick, wildflower-scented, and stickier than internet drama. You take a bite, chew again, and you realize this isn't breakfast. This is jaw training for jousting practice. Next to it, a wedge of 3-week-aged goat cheese, boldly pungent. Once, a guard mistook the smell for burning armor and nearly dumped a whole bucket of water on the table. You also have a slice of last winter's salted meat, so salty that if you ate the whole piece, you could hear your kidneys whispering for water. You sip from a mug of watered honey, the 1247 version of brown sugar boba milk tea, and sigh, well, it's no brunch in the town square, but it's enough to take on a few shields. Across from you sits a young apprentice, trying to bite into his bread with his front teeth. You remind him gently, if you want to live to see spring, slice your bread before eating. If you want to be a knight, don't fight your food. You end breakfast with a small, polite burp. A knight never burps louder than a falling axe. That's the bare minimum standard. You stretch again. Your body warms. Your belly speaks of fullness, not hunger. And in your heart, there's a simple thought. This breakfast won't make me a hero, but it might stop me from fainting during sword drills. Morning training. When you fight a straw dummy and your own self, you head to the training yard. The wind is cool. The sun is rising. You put on your training armor, lighter than battle gear, but only in the way iron flip-flops are lighter than steel boots. Before you stands a straw dummy meant to represent your imaginary enemy. His name is Sir Straw. You swing your sword, strike his shoulder. He doesn't react, because he's a straw dummy. You smile. At least this is the one fight this week you're guaranteed to win. Next up, horseback training. You grip your lance, ride through a line of wooden posts, your hand tight on the reins, wind rushing past your face, and for a moment you feel glorious, until you hear a soft snap. Not your lance, not the horse stumbling, but the linen drawstring of your undergarments giving way. You pretend nothing happened. Lift your chin. Gaze into the distance like a poet who just finished Ode to the Breeze. No one notices, but deep down you're thinking, today is both martial training and a lesson in humility. You return to the yard. Sweat drips from your brow. Your underlayer is soaked. You're panting like a hunting hound that's run 3 laps around the castle searching for a lost bone. But deep down, you feel peaceful, because you know you're not training to fight. You're training to refine your spirit, not to be great, but to make sure your weakness never harms another. And if you're still awake right now, just imagine you've laid down your sword, resting beneath the shade of an old oak tree by the training yard. A soft breeze passes and you gently close your eyes, your whole body weightless, as if placing an invisible burden onto the gentle earth of the 13th century. Morning. Before the dawn has even stretched its arms, you've already cracked one eye open, just slightly. A sound echoes from afar, powerful, regal, and nearly impossible to ignore. It's not the iPhone alarm, it's not a meditation chime from your sleep app. It's the crow of the Lord of the Chicken Coop at the foot of the castle. The rooster, with feathers spiked like they've been blow-dried into style, stands proudly atop the feeding trough, and crows as if he's the one tasked with waking the entire universe. He crows with pride. He crows without permission. He crows as if to say, "Hey, you knight, the sun is up, go defend justice or something." You shift slightly. The wool blanket scratches at your skin, the kind of blanket that, if you sleep in the wrong position, you'll wake up with a topographic map etched onto your arm. You're lying on a sturdy oak bed, which sounds luxurious, but in truth, it's so firm that if you roll too hard, the bed won't budge, but your spine might emotionally resonate. Above the bed is a mattress stuffed with dry straw, not the kind that smells like a spa's herbal steam, just straw. The kind where you might occasionally find a whole stalk still intact, making you wonder whether you're the one sleeping or the chicken. You peek outside. The first light of morning timidly sneaks through the narrow slit of the stone window. That light falls directly on the woolen tapestry where St. George stands in heroic posture, stabbing a dragon, a truly inspiring start of day image. You look at it, sigh softly, and whisper in your heart, "All right, George, I'll try to fight today too, but I'm not slaying any dragons before breakfast, because a hungry belly swings no sword, though it may swing a spoon rather aggressively." You stretch. Your spine cracks with a small pop like a rice cracker snapping in two. It doesn't hurt. It's just the familiar sound of a knight in his 30s, in a world where glucosamine doesn't exist. You sit up. Leather boots are right beside the bed. A linen shirt, slightly wrinkled, folded last night using the classic roll it and hope for the best technique. Your armor lies in the corner, still gleaming, as if whispering, "Put me on later, okay?" The whole castle seems quiet. It's just you, the rooster still crowing like a DJ, and a long day ahead, filled with people to help, battles to avoid unless absolutely necessary, and a breakfast calling your name from the small southern kitchen, where there's dark bread, cheese, and the faint hope that today the cured meat won't be as salty as yesterday. And if you still can't fall asleep, just lie there and imagine that you're not someone bracing against a world of deadlines, but a knight yawning his way through the 13th century, with a stiff bed, a proud rooster, and a peaceful heart that has already surrendered the day to the Almighty. And so, tonight's story comes gently to a close. The lantern by the door has dimmed. The fire in your heart now glows with soft, steady embers. Whether you're a knight resting after battle, a runaway noble in search of the perfect donut, or a thief with taste who receives letters from a princess, the most important thing right now is simply this. You are here, safe, with nothing to prove, no role to play, no mask to wear. Just breathe. Slow down. Let go of those shoulders you've been unconsciously holding up to brace against the world all day. And if you're still awake, that's okay. There's no rush. Sleep isn't a race. It's a quiet whisper from your body saying, you deserve rest. So tonight, may your rest be gentle, like a thick woolen blanket in a stone castle, like a wooden chair beside a glowing hearth, like the quiet smile of someone who understands you without needing an explanation. Sleep well, dear dreamer. The most awake soul in the night. Perfect. The curtain is lifting. The story that once whispered through parchment, purple ink, and cinnamon-scented suggestions now reaches its final night. No more letters, no more distance, only moonlight, a knock at the door, and a princess stepping out of her golden frame. The night is still. No one knows. You're lying down, reviewing your latest sketch, a color palette proposal for the West Chapel of the Abbey. They hired you because your designs were more tasteful than the last and slightly less haunted. Moonlight spills through the window. The night holds its breath. The owl doesn't blink. The wind tiptoes past the trees. Then, a knock. Just one. Soft, but real. You step out. Moonlight falls across the figure standing at your cave's entrance. A travel dress in smoky blue, hands holding nothing except a rolled scroll. She says, I'm sorry for not writing first, but I had to know if you were real. You invite her in, not like a host, but like someone who has kept a second wooden chair by the fire for far too long without anyone to sit in it. She doesn't flinch at the cave, doesn't mind the dust, doesn't scan the room for anything worth stealing. She simply looks around and asks, have you ever lived in a palace? You smile. I fixed them. Never lived in one. Tea, and a silence with no pen between you. You make tea. 2 clay cups. No one mentions the absence of a silver tray. She says, I used to think a princess only needed a perfect gown, graceful phrases, and a decent curtsy. But then I read your letters, and for the first time I saw someone rearrange the world, not to control it, but to make it more beautiful. You look at her. Firelight dances on her cheek. No crown, yet she glows like she stepped out of an untold fairy tale. No plan, but a path. She unrolls the scroll, not a letter, a room design. A bedroom, small, simple, monochrome, with a window that opens to the woods. I don't know what comes next, but I know I don't want to go back. I may not know how to live like you do, but if you'll teach me how to hang a lantern straight, I can teach you how to make royal pastries. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because, for the first time, someone has asked, can I stay? And if you're still awake, imagine you are him. A man used to walking quietly like a shadow, now met by someone who wants to rearrange the whole world with you. Not for a crown, not for gold, but because between the two of you, everything, from the lights to your hearts, is finally finding its right place. Of course, you're still lying there, soft pillow beneath your head, the fan whispering like wind through castle halls, eyes half closed, like a drawbridge left slightly ajar. And in that warm darkness, the story continues. Not of a king, not of a hero, but of you, the man who walks by night correcting interior design with patience and a fountain pen, letters between silk curtains and softer hearts. When a princess writes handwritten letters, to a thief who leaves nothing behind but well-phrased notes on color theory. It began with a sketch, then came a thank you, then discussions beyond drapery. You receive the second letter one morning. The pigeon arrives with a bit more confidence than last time. It's learning the route. The note reads, Dear thief, your ballroom design rendered my mother silent for 42 seconds. That is a royal record. I have a few questions. Does pale olive work with golden candlelight? Should I go with velvet or linen this summer? And why would someone like you choose to live outside of everything? You stop at the last line. A leaf drifts gently onto your shoulder as if answering the question before you can. You write back. Not a long letter, but a real one. You're not great with words. You never learned how to talk to someone you were probably supposed to avoid. But you reply, Princess Amelie, Pale olive works, as long as the candlelight doesn't lean too red. Linen is lighter, but velvet holds its shape, useful if one must maintain distance from overly curious guests. As for me, when I was a child, my family hung a painting that caught the light all wrong, and no one in the village said a thing. Since then, I decided if I must live in a world of misaligned angles, the least I can do is adjust it slightly. From that day on, the letters arrive regularly. Not sweet, not romantic in a poetry book kind of way, just honest words from a girl who'd never walked in the rain without attendance and a thief who'd never called anyone his, talking about everything except themselves. Later, historians would debate, did Princess Amelie truly fall under the thief's spell, or did she simply use him to rehabilitate the royal family's sense of style? Some records note that during this time, royal architectural trends were heavily influenced by a series of anonymous letters written in deep purple ink with a faint peppermint scent. No one was ever found. No one arrested. Only remnants remained, walls better painted, lighting warmer, and one final letter, never recovered. And if you're drifting now, just imagine that you are this person. No title, no crown. But you are the one a princess chooses to write to. Not because of power, but because she believes you know where things belong, not just in the drawing room, but in the human heart. Another night, another tower. You're crawling in through a high window, not for the thrill, but because the front entrance has a 700-year-old iron door that weighs about as much as a mother-in-law's resentment. Inside, a private library, high ceilings, dim lighting. You scan quickly. Oak shelves in perfect proportion, an Aubusson rug aligned exactly with the room's axis. You blink. Huh. Someone here actually has taste. You take nothing. Instead, you leave a note. I'm rarely impressed, but this room is so well balanced, I felt no urge to steal a thing. Truly. Except maybe the floor lamp. It gives off village PTA fundraiser energy. You attach the note to the door handle and leave. Quiet as a whisper, the kind that says, someone is watching and has strong opinions about your wall color. And then, the letter arrives. 3 days later, you return to your forest hideout. Outside the cave, a pigeon, tied to its leg, a piece of parchment. Royal seal, wax, flourish, you sigh. Another poetic arrest warrant? No. The letter reads, Dear thief, I read your comment on the floor lamp. I agree, but I've never met anyone bold enough to say it and leave without taking a thing. If your taste is as legendary as rumors claim, I have a request. The Royal Ballroom currently looks like a collision between an Italian zoo and an Irish pub. Might you consider stopping by? Signed, Princess Amelie, the one who didn't choose the peacock curtains, but whose mother insisted. You sit down, take a slow bite of dry bread. Not from hunger, but to think, I've just been invited by a princess to redecorate her living room. You don't send a reply. Instead, you sketch a full-color palette on parchment. At the bottom, you write, I don't take commissions, but here's a suggestion. And please, burn those peacock drapes. They're not a power statement. They're a lighting tragedy. You tie the scroll to the pigeon's leg, give its head a gentle scratch, and let it fly. No one sees. Only the trees rustle, whispering like old friends. It's beginning. And if you're drifting into sleep now, just imagine you are that person, living in the shadows, no crown, no throne, but quietly reshaping royal taste with nothing more than a brush pen and an exceptionally rational attitude. You leave no footprints, only a better aesthetic order. You're slipping quietly through a stone-tiled corridor. Outside, the sky is as dark as a stew pot left simmering too long on the fire. The wooden door creaks softly behind you. A draft slips through the cracks, carrying the scent of burning wood and a faint note of peppermint candle. You're not a knight, not a monk, not a farmer rising with the sun. You're a thief. But not your average, run-of-the-mill type. You are a thief with taste. You don't steal out of poverty, nor out of some deep-seated rebellion against feudalism. No, you do this because olive green curtains in noble houses offend you. Your feet sink slightly into a thick wool rug, every step flattening centuries of sheep beneath you. A grand portrait hangs nearby, the eyes of a powdered ancestor following your every move, silently judging. Steal what you must, but leave the sundial clock alone. You smile. You don't touch the clock. You just take a hand-embroidered pillow. Because honestly, it clashes with the vintage goatskin settee. From your cloak, you pull out a small piece of parchment. You carefully write, This house has potential, but placing a portrait in backlight like that makes your great-great-grandfather look like a haunted circus act. Also, consider repainting the walls. Ivory with amber lighting is a color crime. You leave the note beside the silver teapot. Turn, exit. No sound. No chaos. Except for the oil lamp you adjusted for more neutral lighting. Historians still debate whether thieves like you ever truly existed. Some say it's folklore, invented by medieval housewives to explain why the vase was missing, and the curtains suddenly felt better. Others quietly point out that in several theft reports of the 13th century, there are odd footnotes like, intruder took 2 silver candlesticks and left a suggestion to replace the square dining table with a round one. Few know this. By the 1200s, interior design had become a subtle power flex. Wealthy families hired painters to hand-draw grapevine patterns on their walls, purely to show they had enough money to decorate what others used to hang garlic. And you, thief or not, could not stand seeing a glorious Persian rug off-center with the fireplace. You step down the stone stairs. Your cloak floats gently behind you. The moon casts your shadow long across the courtyard, like a charcoal sketch. Your hand clutches your tool bag, filled with thread, a book titled Color Pairings for the Privileged, and a fine ink brush. You leave no footprints, but you do leave behind a critique on placing chairs directly across from the main door, a Carolingian-era feng shui disaster, a satisfied smile, knowing that although the house lost a few silver pieces, it might just live better after tonight. And if you're still awake, imagine you are this person, drifting through shadows, leaving no screams, no shattered glass, only gentle advice capable of transforming a generation's sense of style. You are not just a thief. You are a quiet purifier of aristocratic ugliness, armed with aesthetic judgment, moonlight, and an ink-dipped brush. Perfect. The storm has a schedule. Friday, which means you have 2 days to prepare. Your nerves, the shop, and the noblewoman who's about to enter a room that smells like fryer oil and durian cream filling. When Roland's mother visits the donut shop, a tale of judgment, flour, and truths dusted with powdered sugar. Friday, 9 a.m., threat level, mother. Roland has been up since 5, not to meditate, but because he dreamed his mother tried to cover the shop in imported Italian silk and fire anyone wearing a t-shirt. May is calm. Let me handle it. I've survived angry customers who got the wrong jam filling. I'll be fine. You nod. But deep down you know, no one is ever truly ready for a woman who can rearrange an entire banquet table using nothing but her eyes. 10:30 a.m., she arrives. A carriage rolls in. Its wheels shine brighter than your forehead. The horses have braided manes. A servant opens the door, and then she steps out, your mother, wearing a fur cloak in a shade best described as antique bronze chocolate, white gloves, so white you suspect they have supernatural cleaning abilities, and an expression like she just caught a whiff of democracy. She scans the shop, lips tight, chin elevated beyond orthopedic recommendation. Roland. Cold, sharp, like a silver fork honed for battle. You swallow. Mother. May steps forward, smiling warmly. Good morning, ma'am. I'm May, co-owner and head baker. Your mother looks at May, then at her apron, then at the cat-shaped donut. Charming, in a very modest way. 11 a.m., tea and tension. You pull out a chair. Your mother sits like it's a temporary throne. May brings out a cup of chamomile tea and a mango-filled donut dusted in powdered sugar. She studies it, tilts her head. This is breakfast? You. Yes. And our customers love it, really. She takes a bite. Silence. The whole room falls still. Even a fly tapping on the window seems to pause. She swallows, sips her tea. Soft, a bit sweet, but not terrible. You're pretty sure May just clenched her fist under the table in silent triumph. 11:17 a.m., the line that changes everything. She sets down the teacup, looks you straight in the eye. Roland, do you truly want this life? Mornings frying dough, afternoons wiping tables, nights sleeping on a hard bed? No titles, no one calling you my lord? You meet her gaze. No one calls me my lord, but here, people call me by my name, and they smile for real. You glance at May. And someone here knows who I really am and still chooses to sit beside me every single day. Your mother is silent. Then, she smiles. The first time in 6 years, not counting when Aunt Mildred fell off her horse. You've grown up. Your mouth falls open. Was that you admitting this is a reasonable life choice? Don't push it. I'm only saying this donut has franchise potential. That night, you close the shop. Your mother returns to the castle with 6 carefully packed donuts in lace boxes. You lie down, your hands still smelling faintly of dough and sugar. You've chosen this life. And though she doesn't say it out loud, your mother is learning to choose it too. Roland, who once wore embroidered gloves to eat apples, is now learning to fry donuts in real oil. Not scented oil, actual oil. 7 a.m., a gentleman in the flower line. Roland wakes early, not out of duty, but because a mouse ran across his face. Also, his wobbly wooden bed just made a crack sound eerily similar to the one his mother made when she discovered his fencing grade in 6th form. He washes his face in cold water. No rose petals. Just the sharp metallic scent of iron pipes and the raw awakening of a man who used to get warmed hand towels brought on silver trays. 8:15 a.m. The donut shop opened with hope, sustained by hot oil. May's already there, sleeves rolled up, hair tied in a yes I'm busy but still adorable kind of way. She tosses him an old apron, embroidered in crooked letters. Flour is your friend. Roland takes it like it's his own personal Excalibur. This apron, flour-stained, vaguely vanilla-scented, is sacred because it lets him do something real. 9:30 a.m., first fry, fire, oil, and a touch of internal panic. Roland drops his first donut into the oil. The splash hits his hand. He yelps like someone just insulted his entire bloodline. May hands him a wooden spoon, unimpressed. You used to hunt deer? Well, I've heard about hunting deer. I made it sound very real in my head. He practices, burns the first one, sells the second. Gets complimented on the third. The fourth looks like a map of Hungary, but it's crispy and charmingly odd, so someone buys it anyway. 1 p.m., Roland the recognizable. Locals start remembering him. No one calls him sir. Instead, it's, hey, curly donut guy. That polite lad who keeps apologizing to the frying pan. Leo? No, wait, he's Ron now, right? Roland likes that. He enjoys being known for the smell of fryer oil and laughter, not for a surname that requires translation and footnotes. 4 p.m., a letter, a warning. A letter arrives, sealed with gold wax, stamped with a lion biting a sword. He knows. Mother, the message is short. You are living beneath the standards of this family. Nevertheless, I shall visit this Friday. Aunt Mildred will accompany me. Wear something appropriate, and do not let me witness you consuming anything with sugar and fried in the same sentence. He looks over at May. She's dusting powdered sugar over a heart-shaped donut. He swallows, not from fear, but because the sugar smells really good. 9 p.m., the calm before the mother storm, night falls, the shop is closed, May and Roland sit beside the now cool oven. He confesses, my mother's coming. She thinks I've temporarily lost my mind. She might be right. May doesn't respond with words. She just hands him a donut. Round. Perfect hole in the middle. No speech needed. He takes a bite. It's still warm. I'm scared she'll pull me back, and then I won't know where home is anymore. May smiles. Then you just have to remember, whose donuts taste better, your mother's or mine? That night, Roland lies on his creaky wooden bed. Cool wind slides through the wooden shutters, an owl hoots outside, and somewhere deep in his chest, he hears butter melting. Slow, soft, and warm. Friday, she arrives. Friday will be war. But tonight, he has a donut. And someone who believes he can fry it right. The next morning, no breakfast, just death stares. You sit across from your mother in the dining hall. The table is 10 meters long, a distance wide enough for her voice to echo like a royal decree. She doesn't yell, she doesn't cry. She simply takes a sip of mint tea and asks, how many glasses did you wash? You answer, 35. She nods, silently. Another sip of tea, probably to help swallow the fury shaped like a dish towel. You're summoned to an emergency family council. In attendance, your father, Count Wilmore, who speaks exactly 7 words per week, Aunt Edith, who hasn't smiled since the plague of 1344, and the family lawyer, whose main job is to find legal ways to preserve noble dignity when the heir gets caught bussing tables. You stand before them, you speak plainly. I just want to understand what the real world is. I haven't abandoned the family. I just want to live. Beyond a schedule written in gold ink. Silence. The only sound, Aunt Edith choking on her tea from drinking through the wrong end of the cup. The verdict, save the family's image. Your father sighs. Your mother declares, you have 3 choices. Stay and get engaged to Lady Constance, whose dowry could build 3 castles, leave, lose your title, but keep your riding boots, or take an official sabbatical to a monastery on the borderlands to contemplate freedom and responsibility. You ask, does that option come with donuts? Your mother doesn't laugh, but you do, because deep down, you already know what you'll choose. Your final night in the castle, no tears required. You write a letter. Mother, I love you, but I can't marry someone just because her family tree matches the carpet. I need to live. Truly. With donuts, with hand-washed mugs, and with someone who loves me, not my title. I will return, but with a name I've earned, not inherited. You leave the letter beside a glass of wine, you change back into your commoner's clothes, and you walk out quietly carrying exactly 3 things: a bag of donuts, a worn dish towel from the tavern, and a small hope that May is still working that corner stall. The journey begins, no longer noble, just good. You return to the market, back to the old tavern. Ned spots you and squints. What is it now? Quit palace life again? You nod. You smile, and this time you ask to wash dishes not to escape, but because you chose it. May sees you. Same bright eyes, same flower-covered apron, same wild hair, same voice that makes you forget all the Greek poetry you ever read. You say, I'm Roland, not Leo, not a lord, just me, and I can wash 35 glasses without breaking a single one. May pauses for a moment, then smiles. Good. You start tomorrow morning, and try not to spill water on my donuts this time. That night, you lie on a creaky wooden bed in a tiny rented room. No silk, no curtains, no portraits of ancestors judging you from the walls. Just you, the sound of crickets, and the lightest sleep of your life, because for the first time ever, you don't have to play anyone else. Wonderful. The double life begins. Because after buying your first onion without a personal assistant, you, our noble Lord Roland, came to a quiet realization. Life that smells like sweat and soup somehow feels more real than lavender sachets and perfectly ironed tablecloths. And so begins the double life of Lord Roland. By day, a nobleman in silk. By night, a glass washer, mopping up spilled ale with a borrowed rag. Daytime, still a nobleman, but now with a secret. You return to the castle. The schedule remains unchanged. Meals with noble guests, smile in the correct vocal tone, listen to lute recitals, nod occasionally like you deeply understand, read romantic poems by people who died from boredom and societal expectations. But now there's a difference. Every time someone asks, and what are your thoughts on Lord Byron, you remember the fish pie vendor shouting profanities into the sunset breeze. And you smile, just slightly, like you've secretly taken another spoonful of freedom. At night, a new outfit, a fake name, a new job. You sneak out in commoner's clothes, leave through the back gate, walk 15 minutes past 2 sleeping dogs, and arrive at the Noble Mud Tavern, a gathering place for all social classes, mostly the lower ones, and the horizontal. You begin working there under the name Leo, just Leo. No title, no surname, no family crest. Your first job? Washing glasses, by hand. No help, no string quartet playing in the background. You drop your first mug. The tavern owner, a man the size of a medieval fireplace, bellows, Leo, that mug's older than the last dynasty. You apologize. You bow your head. You feel genuinely alive in a mildly foot-cramping kind of way. Real friendship and the loss of noble mystique. You meet Ned, the one-eyed floor mopper with 3 X's and 0 books. Ned teaches you how to carry 5 mugs at once without spilling ale onto customers. In return, you teach Ned how to pronounce spontaneity, to impress women. In exchange for that, he teaches you the most important sentence in the tavern. Sorry, we're out of blood sausage, but we've got slightly fried mystery fish. You memorize it, you write it down, and for the first time in your life, you realize life can be slightly fried and still feel worth it. You meet her. And a truth that doesn't go down easy. One night you meet May, the donut vendor at the corner of the marketplace. Hair wild, hands dusted with flour, eyes bright like market lights that haven't lost battery yet. You talk. She laughs when you accidentally refer to salted eggs as civic yoke tax benefits. You start to like her, not because she's beautiful, though she is, but because she doesn't know who you are and likes you anyway. But of course, you can't hide forever. One evening, as you're wiping down tables, the bell rings. The door opens, and in walks your mother, wearing full fox fur, eyes sharp as a prenuptial agreement. She looks around, then looks at you, and with one devastating question asks, Roland, what are you doing, holding a flour-stained towel? That night, you return home. No words spoken, just the cold wind curling around your old linen shirt. You've been found out, and now you must face the consequences. Not for breaking a glass, but for living more honestly, for at least 12 hours a day. Wonderful. The double life begins. Because after buying your first onion without a personal assistant, you, our noble Lord Roland, came to a quiet realization. Life that smells like sweat and soup somehow feels more real than lavender sachets and perfectly ironed tablecloths. And so begins the double life of Lord Roland. By day, a nobleman in silk. By night, a glass washer, mopping up spilled ale with a borrowed rag. Daytime, still a nobleman, but now with a secret. You return to the castle. The schedule remains unchanged. Meals with noble guests, smile in the correct vocal tone, listen to lute recitals, nod occasionally like you deeply understand, read romantic poems by people who died from boredom and societal expectations. But now there's a difference. Every time someone asks, "And what are your thoughts on Lord Byron?" you remember the fish pie vendor shouting profanities into the sunset breeze. And you smile, just slightly, like you've secretly taken another spoonful of freedom. At night, a new outfit, a fake name, a new job. You sneak out in commoner's clothes, leave through the back gate, walk 15 minutes past two sleeping dogs, and arrive at the Noble Mud Tavern, a gathering place for all social classes, mostly the lower ones and the horizontal. You begin working there under the name Leo, just Leo. No title, no surname, no family crest. Your first job, washing glasses, by hand, no help. No string quartet playing in the background. You drop your first mug. The tavern owner, a man the size of a medieval fireplace, bellows, "Leo, that mug's older than the last dynasty." You apologize. You bow your head. You feel genuinely alive in a mildly foot-cramping kind of way. Real friendship and the loss of noble mystique. You meet Ned, the one-eyed floor mopper with 3 X's and 0 books. Ned teaches you how to carry 5 mugs at once without spilling ale onto customers. In return, you teach Ned how to pronounce spontaneity to impress women. In exchange for that, he teaches you the most important sentence in the tavern. "Sorry, we're out of blood sausage, but we've got slightly fried mystery fish." You memorize it. You write it down. And for the first time in your life, you realize life can be slightly fried and still feel worth it. You meet her, and a truth that doesn't go down easy. One night, you meet May, the donut vendor at the corner of the marketplace. Hair wild, hands dusted with flour, eyes bright like market lights that haven't lost battery yet. You talk. She laughs when you accidentally refer to salted eggs as civic yoke tax benefits. You start to like her, not because she's beautiful, though she is, but because she doesn't know who you are, and likes you anyway. But of course, you can't hide forever. One evening, as you're wiping down tables, the bell rings, the door opens, and in walks your mother, wearing full fox fur, eyes sharp as a prenuptial agreement. She looks around, then looks at you, and with one devastating question asks, "Roland, what are you doing, holding a flour-stained towel?" That night, you return home, no words spoken, just the cold wind curling around your old linen shirt. You've been found out, and now you must face the consequences. Not for breaking a glass, but for living more honestly for at least 12 hours a day. A day as a commoner, when a nobleman goes undercover to the marketplace and discovers society doesn't use lace napkins. Morning begins with a bold decision. You wake up at 7 a.m. after a strange dream in which you were running a marathon in tight trousers while everyone laughed. Your personal attendant enters, ready with your brocade tunic and the day's agenda. 08, harp practice. 9, tea with your 9th cousin. 10, choose a new color for the horse's mane, but today you push it all aside. You say, "No, Cedric, today I'm going to the market, alone, no carriage, no guards, no velvet carpet." Cedric nearly faints into his own cravat, disguise level, commoner chic. You change clothes, no silk, no gold trim, just a rough cotton shirt, faded trousers, and a floppy cloth hat. You look into the mirror and whisper, "I look like a peasant with impeccable taste." You take your coin pouch, emptied by 90% to make it realistic, and sneak out the back gate like a shy version of Robin Hood. The market, a cultural shock like no other. You arrive at the town square. The sound, chaos, like everyone's freestyle rapping in 15 regional accents. The smell, roasted meat, handmade soap, and something mysteriously smoky that probably shouldn't be. You wander in awe and see it. An onion. Yes, a real onion, with dusty brown skin lying honestly in the sun. No ribbon, no label. You ask, "Madam, what version is this onion?" The vendor looks at you as if you just asked if cows could fly. Shopping, not like the poems say. You try to buy an apple. You reach for one carefully and ask, "Do I need an appointment first?" The vendor snaps, "Are you buying or just holding fruit like a decorative bishop?" You fumble your coins, drop 3. You bend to pick them up, forgetting you're in pants that don't tie properly. Verger, a breeze picks up. You lose 10% of your dignity. Real people, real conversations. A young boy selling herring approaches you. You reply, "Pardon me, I fast on odd-numbered days. Today is the 15th, right?" He responds, "People here eat fish to live, not to write in journals." You realize you need to relearn local culture. Things like how to dress without assistance, how to refuse sausage without offending a meat enthusiast, how to walk barefoot on cobblestones without yelping every 2 steps, lunch like a commoner and almost call a stomach priest. You try the local bean porridge, no silver spoon, no linen tablecloth, no one standing by to refill your goblet. You take one bite. Oh, this tastes honest, deeply honest, like a hug from a judgmental aunt. You finish it. Not because it's delicious, but because freedom tastes strange and also slightly overcooked, but somehow it makes you feel alive. Evening return, someone new. You return to the castle just before sunset, hair a mess, hands smell like onion, shirt stained with porridge from coughing too hard when emotionally overwhelmed. You step into the great hall. Your mother looks up. Heavens, where did you go? The 12th century countryside romance section. You smile. You don't explain. You simply hand her an onion and say, "I bought this, myself, and I think I want to live more honestly." That night, you lie down. Not beneath embroidered silk, but under a hand-woven blanket you picked up at the market. You're no longer just a nobleman who changes outfits. You're someone who buys onions. And tomorrow might be carrots. Imagine this. You're sitting in a grand room. The ceiling arches high above, glittering with crystal chandeliers. Velvet carpets hush every step beneath your feet. Portraits of ancestors line the walls, faces suspiciously similar to yours, except they all gaze off into the distance as if they've just remembered they left the oven on. You're not wearing armor. You're wearing a hand-embroidered linen shirt, a silk robe trimmed with gold thread, and a gaze that quietly asks what one is supposed to do with such a luxurious, useless life. Because you are a medieval nobleman, living a life of elegance, emptiness, and the constant risk of being so bored you start playing the lute for days. Your name is Roland, or Alaric, or something long enough that your servant has to pause for breath when announcing you. You are the 3rd son of a count, not old enough to inherit the castle, not young enough to be forgotten. You were born to exist, gracefully. In the morning, you're awakened not by alarms, not by, "Hey Siri," but by the faint chime of a silver bell rung by a servant holding a tray of tea steeped with morning sunlight and spring water that once passed through ancestral soil. You don't say thank you, not because you're rude, just you were taught that thank yous belong in handwritten letters, not mornings. You wear silk shirts, velvet wrist ties, slippers so soft they make the grass feel guilty for being stepped on. You look out the window. The landscape is perfect, not a single detail out of place. And you sigh, as if trying to clear space in your mind for something real. Your mornings are filled with fencing lessons, mainly for wedding banquets you won't emotionally attend. At noon, you study Latin, even though you know you'll never actually use it. By afternoon, lute practice, and quoting Plato into a room where no one argues back. You're not poor, you're not suffering. You're just not entirely sure if this life really belongs to you. Modern researchers now say that many young noblemen in the Middle Ages suffered from existential fatigue, the exhaustion of living without a reason to strive. They wouldn't starve, they wouldn't go to war, they simply had nothing to do except maintain the perfect image in a world where everyone was always watching. You once tried writing poetry, then you tore it up. You had no idea who to write it for. Love? No one is allowed to love you for you, only for the chance to sit at your family's dinner table. You've thought about leaving, doing something wild, riding off into the forest without your name, carrying only the question, if I'm not the son of that noble house, then who am I? And now you lie still, on a bed too wide for one lonely soul. The curtains sway gently, the hourglass still flows. No one calls your name except yourself in your own mind out of habit. You are a nobleman, you have everything, and you are still searching for something worth believing in. Wonderful. So now we'll leave behind the clanging armor, the dramatic tumbles into mud, and the awkward conversations with judgmental Geese to step into the life of someone entirely new. You're still awake, eyes half closed, mind drifting through castles and quiet stone halls, wandering through memories like flickering candlelight, but this time you're no longer a knight. No. Splendid, you've been knighted. You've eaten cheese, not as the one who brings the cheese, but under your brand new title, Sir. And then, that day arrived. Your very first mission, not to slay a dragon, not to storm a castle, not even to duel a pirate warlord from the Western Isles. No. Your first mission, escorting a ceremonial procession of 3 noble ladies, 1 bearded priest and 2 very opinionated geese. That morning, you're polishing your armor with a cloth that you're fairly sure was used to wipe the dinner table the night before. That's when the guard knocks. Sir, you've been assigned to escort Lady Matilda's procession to the great cathedral. She's accompanied by a priest and some living creatures. You ask, hunting dogs? No, geese. Very large, very self-assured. You mount your horse and ride to the castle gate. Before you stands an ornate wooden carriage pulled by 2 extremely disinterested horses. Riding atop, 3 noble women dressed like a Renaissance wine tasting collided with a town council debate. Lady Matilda, head of the group, peers down at you. Oh, so you're the new knight? Taller than they said. Pleasant surprise. You bow. You do not mention the secret heel lifts in your boots. The caravan sets off. The weather is mild. The countryside smells of grass, wildflowers, and just enough fresh horse manure to compose a warning letter. You ride beside the carriage, eyes alert, not for bandits, no, but for the 2 geese waddling ahead of the group like minor nobles with tight schedules. Everything goes smoothly, until Lady Matilda demands a tea break in the middle of the road. You don't see tea. Just some biscuits harder than stone, and a jar of honey that's runnier than a mercenary's loyalty. Sitting on the roadside, you bite into a biscuit. 3 chews in, your jaw files for reassignment. Meanwhile, one of the geese, Eleanor, as the lady insists, suddenly chases a firewood seller for looking suspicious. You chase the goose, armor clanging like a percussion ensemble running on no sleep. You catch it. You lift it. The goose looks at you like it's a wronged princess, and you just some tin-clad peasant. You sigh, not from exhaustion, but because this is not what you pictured when you dreamt of becoming a knight. You once imagined galloping through deserts, lanced jousts before roaring crowds, battles, both literal and metaphorical. Instead, you're a goose nanny, a cookie holder for noble women who breathe more than they walk. Historians still debate, did medieval knights actually spend most of their time in battle or mostly escorting people, attending parties, and writing leave requests for emotional fatigue? Records suggest many knights were flexibly deployed, anything from tending horses to retrieving a lost cat for a widowed countess. Eventually, you arrive at the cathedral. No injuries, no enemies, just 1 goose missing a few feathers from charging a thorn bush. You bow to the ladies. They clap, politely, half-heartedly, and hand you a custard tart and a handkerchief embroidered with the words, "You did fine." You take the handkerchief, you mount your horse, and on the way back, you think, not the mission I'd hoped for. But I did my part, and honestly, the goose wasn't that bad when it wasn't angry. And if you're still awake now, imagine this. You, a real knight, have completed your very first mission. No blood spilled, no honor lost, just a slightly sore back from bending down to hug a goose. 3 times. Tomorrow may be a battle, but today was patience. And for now, that is enough. Gladly, brave knight. You've endured winters colder than your ex's heart, summers hotter than a dragon's breath, and more painful falls than your dignity would care to count, some of which made your nose consider filing for early retirement from your face. But then, the day came. The day you were no longer just that squire who sharpens swords, runs errands, and tastes tests potentially poisoned soup. The day you officially became a true knight. The kind they actually call by name, without following it up with, "Bring me my lance, would you?" That morning, the sun was gentle. No storm clouds, no suspicious breezes, not even a raven to foreshadow doom. A day so suspiciously normal, you nearly forgot it was your knighting ceremony. You walk into the castle's grand hall. The floor tiles are as cold as your lord's heart every payday. 2 lines of guards stand rigid, so still you wonder if someone accidentally cast a freeze spell. There, on the raised dais, stands the count, beard like a thatch roof, expression like a final exam, holding the very sword you've been polishing for 3 years with nothing but old rags and fragile hope. You kneel. One leg trembles. Not from fear, you just haven't had breakfast. The drums echo, boom boom. The monk's voice rings out. The count approaches. Candlelight glints off his armor like someone turned Photoshop's brightness all the way up. He raises the blade and taps your shoulders, left, then right. You hear the words, "From this day I name thee knight, protector of the realm, defender of honor and justice, and whatever's currently burning in the kitchen if the cook forgot the fire again." Applause thunders through the hall. No one cries. But you almost do. Not from emotion. Your new leather boots are so stiff, kneeling that long has turned your legs into medieval tofu. They give you a shield, unscuffed, a silk cape flowing like pride caught in a summer breeze, and a purse of coins. You open it, 5 silver pieces, a rusty button, and possibly a walnut shell. You rise. The hall chants your name. At that very moment, a guard knocks over an oil lamp. The carpet catches fire. With the reflexes of a real knight, you slap the flames out with your shield. There's a second round of applause. You're rewarded with an extra bowl of cheese stew at the feast. That night, you sit at the great table. The stew is overcooked, but it tastes like victory. Because today, you are no longer the one who polishes the blade. You are the one who wields it. You no longer linger in the shadows. You stand in the hall among comrades, among history, and between 2 squires fighting over the last piece of pie. Now you're back in your chamber. Cape off. Boots off. Shield placed gently on the rack, like setting your future where it finally belongs. The night breeze flows in through the window, whispering like fate itself. You have endured, you've been called by name, you are a knight, and now you have 2 days off. No armor polishing, enjoy it.